They were the campy heroes and villains of the most famous superhero show in television history. But behind the pow and bam, this cast carried some of the strangest, darkest stories in Hollywood. One was blacklisted by a president after making the First Lady cry. One was reported dead in the newspapers after a car crash he survived. And one was given actual pills to shrink his private parts. 60 years later, this is where all of them ended up. Number 1 is Adam West, the Bright Knight himself. The straight-faced Bruce Wayne who held the entire show together with his refusal to smile. He was 37 when Batman premiered. He would spend the rest of his life fighting the shadow of a role he could not escape, and eventually, near the end, learning to embrace it. Here is the arc of the man behind the cowl. Born William West Anderson on September 19, 1928, in Walla Walla, Washington, Adam earned a literature and psychology degree from Whitman College before drifting into acting. He was hired for Batman in 1966, partly on the strength of a Nestle Quick commercial in which he parodied James Bond. He was married 3 times and had 4 children. He was seriously considered for the role of James Bond in Diamonds Are Forever in 1970, but turned it down, believing only a British actor should play Bond. Sean Connery took the role instead. The typecasting after Batman was ruthless. West spent 2 decades in obscurity, and then in 2000, Seth MacFarlane cast him as the voice of Mayor Adam West on Family Guy, and everything shifted. He became a beloved American character all over again. In the spring of 2017, he appeared in perfect health at a signing with Burt Ward, walking faster than his younger co-star. 3 weeks later, no one told Ward he had gone to the hospital. On June 9, 2017, Adam West died at his home in Los Angeles of leukemia at 88. The city projected the bat signal on City Hall in his memory. That man was the caped crusader who defended Gotham with an unshakable moral code. Adam West was the man who turned down James Bond, spent 20 years fighting the shadow of a role he could not shake, and learned near the end that being loved as one perfect thing was the greatest gift a career could give. The Bright Knight, right until the last. Number 2 is Julie Newmar, the original Catwoman, and the only person on this list besides Burt Ward still alive today at 92 years old. She was 33 when Batman premiered. She had already won a Tony Award, and after Batman, she quietly became one of the wealthiest women in Los Angeles. Here is the second act. Born Julia Shalene Newmar on August 16, 1933 in Los Angeles, Julie was a prima ballerina at 15 and a Tony Award-winning Broadway star before Catwoman was even a script. In 1977, she married attorney J. Holt Smith, and though the marriage ended in 1984, she had one son with him, John Jewel Smith, born in 1981, who has Down syndrome and remains the center of her private life. Beginning in the 1980s, Julie invested heavily in Los Angeles real estate and was credited with revitalizing entire neighborhoods around her home. She was diagnosed with Charcot-Marie tooth disease. As of today, at 92, she is still active on social media. Her voice returned as Catwoman in Batman: Return of the Caped Crusaders in 2016. Catwoman was the seductive villain who could tempt Bruce Wayne into forgetting the mission. Julie Newmar was a Tony-winning ballerina who quietly built a real estate fortune, raised a son with Down syndrome, and spent her entire life turning every role into something more than the script asked for. Number 3 is Burt Ward, the earnest, wide-eyed boy wonder, still alive today at 80 years old. He was 20 when Batman premiered. He had never acted on camera before. He had a brown belt in karate and 0 training. And within weeks of putting on the mask, ABC executives sent him to a doctor for one of the strangest requests in television history. Here is the reason. Born Burt John Gervis Jr. on July 6, 1945 in Los Angeles, Burt was a straight-A student at UCLA, ranked in the top 3% nationally in science and math, on his way to becoming a nuclear physicist. His dean was furious when he dropped out to play Robin, but the moment he put on the costume, ABC had a problem. The Catholic Legion of Decency wrote formal complaints. Robin, in Burt's own words, had a very large bulge for television, so ABC sent him to a doctor, who prescribed pills to shrink me up. He took them for 3 days. Then he stopped, terrified they would prevent him from ever having children. From then on, he simply arranged his cape to cover the problem. He got hurt constantly doing his own stunts. He has been married 4 times. He and his current wife, Tracy Posner, have run Gentle Giants Rescue since 1994, and by his own count, they have saved more than 15,500 dogs from euthanasia. Robin was the loyal sidekick who shouted, "Holy!" something, and jumped headfirst into every fight. Burt Ward was the near-nuclear physicist who left a scientific career behind, endured pills designed to reduce his body for a network, and has spent the last 3 decades saving 15,000 dogs. Number 4 is Cesar Romero, the original Joker, the man who painted white grease paint over his mustache every day rather than shave it off. He was 59 when Batman premiered, already a 30-year Hollywood veteran, and behind the mustache, he was hiding 2 secrets only spoken about openly after his death. Here are the secrets. Born Cesar Julio Romero Jr. on February 15, 1907 in New York City, Cesar came from an extraordinary lineage. His mother, Maria Mantilla, was widely believed to be the biological daughter of José Martí, the Cuban national hero and revolutionary poet. That meant Cesar Romero, the campy Joker of a Saturday night sitcom, carried the blood of Cuba's founding revolutionary. His mustache, which he refused to shave off for any role, was painted over with white grease paint every morning. If you look closely at any Joker close-up, you can still see it under the paint. And Cesar Romero was gay. In an era that would have destroyed his career, he lived his entire life as a bachelor. He never married. He had no children. His wardrobe held 30 tuxedos and 500 suits. He died on January 1, 1994, in Santa Monica, of a blood clot from bronchitis and pneumonia, at 86. The Joker was the manic clown who covered his face with white paint every night. Cesar Romero was a closeted gay man carrying the bloodline of a Cuban revolutionary, hiding one identity under grease paint and another under a lifetime of well-tailored suits. Number 5 is Burgess Meredith, the top-hatted, umbrella-swinging penguin, and a man who kept acting even as Alzheimer's slowly took his memory away. He was 58 when Batman premiered. Already a World War II captain and a Broadway veteran, he improvised the famous penguin waddle, and he refused, right until the end, to stop working. Here is the road most viewers never knew. Born Oliver Burgess Meredith on November 16, 1907 in Cleveland, Ohio, Meredith was married 4 times, including to actress Paulette Goddard. He served as a captain in the U.S. Army Air Forces during World War II. On Batman, he chewed through the Penguin's cigarettes and injured his throat, developing his signature squawking laugh as a result. In 1976, Sylvester Stallone cast him as Mickey, Rocky Balboa's trainer, earning him a Best Supporting Actor Oscar nomination. In his final years, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, but refused to stop working. On the set of Grumpier Old Men, he acted off cue cards because he could no longer remember his lines. On September 9, 1997, at his home in Malibu, Burgess Meredith died of complications from Alzheimer's and melanoma at 89. The Penguin was the umbrella-wielding villain who always had another trick up his tuxedo sleeve. Burgess Meredith was a 2-time Oscar nominee and a World War II captain who acted from cue cards into his 90th year, because the only thing his failing mind still remembered how to do was perform. Number 6 is Eartha Kitt, the sultry, purring Catwoman of Season 3, and the woman who made a president of the United States blacklist her out of American show business for a decade. Watch her on Batman and you see one of the most electric performances in the entire series. Look at her real life and you find one of the most devastating stories in 20th century entertainment. Here is the moment that ended her American career. Born Eartha Mae Kitt on January 17, 1927, on a cotton plantation in North South Carolina, Eartha was conceived when her mother was raped by a white man. Abandoned as a child, she was rescued at 8 by an aunt in New York. Orson Welles discovered her in Paris and called her the most exciting woman alive. She recorded Santa Baby. And then, on January 18, 1968, at a White House luncheon hosted by First Lady Lady Bird Johnson, Eartha Kitt stood up and told the room the truth about the Vietnam War. She reduced Lady Bird Johnson to tears. Within days, the CIA had a dossier on her, calling her a crazed nymphomaniac. Club owners across America began canceling her bookings. President Johnson had, in effect, blacklisted her. Her U.S. career was destroyed for the next decade. She died on Christmas Day, December 25, 2008, in Connecticut, of colon cancer at 81, on the very day her most famous song plays in every store in America. Catwoman was the villain who could bring Batman to his knees with a whisper. Eartha Kitt brought down her own American career with a single sentence in the White House, and died on the one day of the year the country could not stop playing her voice. Number 7 is Neil Hamilton, the strict Commissioner Gordon who lit the bat signal, and the only cast member from the silent film era. He was 66 when Batman premiered, having been acting on camera since 1918. And he was the one cast member who never quite understood what the show was about. Here is his career. Born James Neil Hamilton on September 9, 1899, in Lynn, Massachusetts, Neil acted in more than 260 productions across a 50-year career. He was a genuine silent film star of the 1920s, and Harry Holt in Tarzan the Ape Man in 1932. And when the campy Batman scripts came across his desk, he famously believed the show should be played straight. He instructed the younger actors to take it seriously. He married Elsa Whitmer in 1922 and stayed with her for 62 years. On September 24, 1984, in Escondido, California, Neil Hamilton died of asthma complications at 85. Commissioner Gordon was the humorless police chief who stood beneath the bat signal and demanded justice. Neil Hamilton was a silent film survivor who watched the entire history of Hollywood pass in front of his camera and never fully accepted the joke was on him. Number 8 is Frank Gorshin, the manic, cackling Riddler whose high-pitched laugh earned him an Emmy nomination. But the story most fans don't know happened years before Batman ever called, in a car on a highway, when the newspapers wrongly reported him dead. Here is what happened. Born Frank John Gorshin Jr. on April 5, 1933 in Pittsburgh, Frank had trained at Carnegie Mellon and served in the Army during the Korean War, when, in 1957, his agent phoned him with the audition of his life. Producers wanted him for Run Silent, Run Deep. He needed to get from Pittsburgh to Los Angeles fast. He decided to drive. He drove 39 consecutive hours, fell asleep at the wheel, and crashed. He fractured his skull. He woke up in a hospital 4 days later. While he was in that coma, a Los Angeles newspaper reported he had been killed in the crash. The Run Silent, Run Deep role went to Don Rickles. But Frank Gorshin was very much alive. He rebuilt. He landed the Riddler in 1966. He married Christina Randazzo and stayed with her for 48 years. On May 17, 2005, in Burbank, Frank Gorshin died of lung cancer at 72. The Riddler was the man whose clues always brought him back to the scene of the crime. Frank Gorshin was the man the newspapers once buried before his real career had even started. A comeback that lasted 48 years, from a coma no one thought he would wake up from. Number 9, Madge Blake, the sweet, fussy Aunt Harriet, and the only cast member of Batman who once helped build the atomic bomb. She was 66 when the show premiered, and her real life carried a secret so completely unlike her character that it would sound made up if the US government had not put it in writing. Here is what most viewers never knew. Born Madge Cummings on May 31, 1899, in Kinsley, Kansas, the daughter of a Methodist circuit rider who forbade her from becoming an actress, Madge did not start acting until she was 50. But long before that, during the Second World War, she and her husband, James Lincoln Blake, moved to Utah and worked in secret on the construction of the detonator for the atomic bomb, testing equipment destined for the Manhattan Project. They received a formal citation from the US government. On the Batman set, when the producers tried to fire her, Adam West personally stood up for her and saved her job. The next day, she left a freshly baked cake in his dressing room, which West called one of the greatest compliments he ever received. She died on February 19, 1969, in Pasadena, of a heart attack at 69. Aunt Harriet was the gentle old lady who baked and worried and never suspected a thing. Madge Blake had once helped build the weapon that ended a world war, waited until 50 to chase her real dream, and got 15 years of Hollywood before her heart gave out. Number 10 is Lee Meriwether, the third and final woman to wear Catwoman's claws, brought in only because Julie Newmar was unavailable, never asked back for a second outing. 6 decades later, she is quietly fighting the exact disease that, only recently, took her own daughter first. Here is the diagnosis nobody expected to become a family story instead of a single sad headline. Born Leanne Meriwether on May 27, 1935 in Los Angeles, distantly connected by her own family's account to the explorer Meriwether Lewis. At 19, an anonymous fraternity nomination pushed her into a beauty pageant she hadn't sought out, and she rode that accident to Miss America 1955, the first ever crowned on live national television. When Newmar became unavailable for the 1966 Batman movie, producers handed Meriwether the role, doubling her as the fabricated Soviet journalist Miss Kitka. The catsuit left her with third-degree burns on both shoulders after a day of outdoor filming. She built a steady career afterward: The Time Tunnel, a Star Trek villain, and 178 episodes as Betty Jones opposite Buddy Ebsen on Barnaby Jones, earning 2 Golden Globe nominations and an Emmy nomination. She married actor Frank Alliter in 1958, had 2 daughters, divorced in 1974, and remarried actor Marshall Borden in 1986. In February 2024, Meriwether and her daughter Kyle announced they had both been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Kyle died from it that July at 64. Lee Meriwether, 91, continues living with the same diagnosis her daughter did not survive. Catwoman was the coldest criminal mind Gotham's underworld ever assembled. Lee Meriwether was an accidental beauty queen who spent 60 years in the shadow of 2 more famous Catwomen, and is now facing, in real life, the one battle no script could have prepared her for. Number 11 is Yvonne Craig, the graceful, motorcycle-riding Batgirl, the very first live-action Batgirl in history. She was 30 when she joined Batman, and before Gotham, she had once been the youngest member of one of the most prestigious ballet companies in the world, and had briefly dated the king of rock and roll. Here is her story. Born Yvonne Joyce Craig on May 16, 1937, in Taylorville, Illinois, Yvonne was the youngest member of the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo by her mid-teens. When she moved into acting, she landed a role opposite Elvis Presley in It Happened at the World's Fair in 1963, and Kissin' Cousins the year after. She and Elvis reportedly dated during that time, but Batgirl, in 1967, was what made her permanent. She was married twice, and after acting, she went into real estate. She kept her breast cancer diagnosis private for over 2 years. On August 17, 2015, at her home in Pacific Palisades, Yvonne Craig died at 78. Batgirl was the quick-witted crime fighter who could match Batman and Robin punch for punch. Yvonne Craig was a Ballet Russe prima ballerina who had ridden with Elvis Presley long before she ever rode a Batgirl motorcycle, and who left the world quietly on her own terms. Number 12 is Alan Napier, the tall, elegant Alfred Pennyworth, the loyal English butler at Wayne Manor, and the only person in the show who knew Batman's real identity. He was 63 when Batman premiered, having never read a single Batman comic in his life, and behind that dignified voice was a family tree that connected him to 2 of the most famous names in British history. Here is the bloodline. Born Alan William Napier Clavering on January 7, 1903 in Birmingham, England, Alan was a first cousin once removed of Neville Chamberlain, the British Prime Minister who declared war on Nazi Germany. Napier studied at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art and joined the Oxford Players alongside a young Laurence Olivier. In 1944, he married his second wife, Aileen Dickens Hawksley, the great-granddaughter of Charles Dickens. Napier suffered a stroke in 1987. On August 8, 1988, in Santa Monica, he died of pneumonia at 85. As a tribute, Jack Nicholson's Joker in the 1989 Tim Burton Batman film was named Jack Napier. Alfred was the impossibly loyal English butler who kept the secret of Wayne Manor. Alan Napier was the cousin of the man who declared war on Hitler, and the husband of Charles Dickens's great-granddaughter, a bloodline of British history walking onto a sitcom in a butler's uniform. Number 13 is Stafford Repp, Chief O'Hara, the second half of Gordon's police department, and the man whose thick Irish brogue was a total fabrication. He was 47 when Batman premiered, and he died young, in a place that told you exactly the kind of man he was. Here is what most viewers never knew. Born on April 26, 1918, in San Francisco, Stafford Repp had broken into television as a sound effects creator for live broadcasts. His Irish accent on Batman was pure invention. He ran a chain of car washes on the side, and he was a devoted horse racing fan. On November 5, 1974, at Hollywood Park Racetrack in Inglewood, Stafford Repp suffered a fatal heart attack while watching the races. He was just 56. Chief O'Hara was the loyal Irish cop who never figured out how the dynamic duo pulled off their tricks. Stafford Repp was a Bay Area sound effects man whose Irish brogue was invented, and who died watching horses run at the track where he had spent so many of his happiest hours. They fought crime in Gotham for 3 seasons and 120 episodes, and today, the trail leads almost entirely into memory. Adam West rests in Los Angeles. Alan Napier's ashes are scattered in a Pacific Palisades garden. Cesar Romero rests at Inglewood Park Cemetery. Burgess Meredith is in Malibu. Frank Gorshin lies in Pittsburgh. Yvonne Craig is in Pacific Palisades. Stafford Repp lies where the horses used to run. Madge Blake is in Glendale. Eartha Kitt lies in Connecticut. 10 of the 13 are gone, but Julie Newmar is 92 and still posting on social media from her Los Angeles home. Burt Ward is 80 and still rescuing dogs by the thousand. And Lee Meriwether, 91, is still here too, facing, without a script this time, the hardest role of her life. 3 are still here, proof that the campiest superhero show in television history was made by people whose real lives were stranger, sadder, braver, and more astonishing than any villain Gotham City ever imagined.